Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video we're going to look at seats. Now most of our classic cars are quite some age and the seats are really worn out, and there's nothing as bad as a bad seat to drive. No matter how good your classic car is, if you have a bad seat, it's no fun to drive it. And it's the same on my TVR. The seats are really worn out, and I have a seat right here. This is the passenger seat, and you can see how this is sagged through. Now the driver's seat was even worse, so I already tried to fix that one, but it wasn't good enough. So there's many different ways on how you now can resolve bad seats. Now if you're a purist, you most likely want to keep the original seats. And if that is the case, then you're probably going to take your seats to an upholstery store and they will just rebuild the seat for you. Often it's quite expensive. On the other hand, you can buy the kit on different websites and do it yourself. There's plenty of foams and elastics and covers to do it yourself. But I'm not a purist, so I am not going to do this. Another option is to buy new sports seats, and in this Mini I did do that. These are very nice classic Cobra seats, and they do sit very comfortable. But it's not the kind of seat you want to have for extended rides. This is a fun seat. Now you can get them with a high back and then more support. Cobra has plenty of options, and there's many other rally seats that you can get. But that's not what I'm going to put in my TVR. I want to have something more modern. I want to have something more comfortable. I want to have something more cozy. So I want to have all these three things together, and really a proper race seat isn't really all that comfortable to drive the car. Another approach is to get an aftermarket seat. Now I am not too keen on aftermarket seats because most of the time the quality doesn't live up to the expectation. After a while they became very soft and loose, and I just didn't like them. I've done it before, so that's what I'm saying. I didn't like them. So I'm not going to do this again. But there's another alternative, and that is getting seats from a modern car that actually fit inside the TVR or your classic car. Now the TVR is a very small car inside, so I have to find a small seat. There are seats available on modern cars that you can fit in your TVR or your classic car for that matter. So let's see what I got. And here it is, guys. A really nice looking Mazda MX-5 Miata seat in pretty good condition, and I have two of them. I got them for less than 200 euros, so that's a bargain, and they are in very good condition. The one with the orange cloth is the MX-5 seat, or the Miata as we call it, and it's one of the earlier models, of course. And this one is the original TVR seat, and you can see in height they're about the same. So that's important when you select a seat from another donor car, that the height is still fitting, because what you don't want is that this sticks onto your roof. The width is more or less the same, as you can see, and also the base is more or less the same. So these are important factors to look at. Now obviously the Miata seat or the MX-5 seat is not a direct fit. You will have to make some adjustments. And let me show you what that is. Now before you do any modifications to the seats, you should fit the seats first and see if they actually fit in width and in height. Now it looks like they will fit, so let's give it a try and see how that seat fills up that space. So what do you reckon, guys? Is it going to fit or is it not going to fit? Look at that. This fits real nice, doesn't it? Yep. You want to make sure that the door can close as well, obviously. But that's going to be the case. That will be just perfect. And then, of course, you want to trial it and crawl in it and see how good it sits, right? And I know the seat isn't set up right for the moment, but it gives me already a good indication on how well it will sit. Now this is better. I think this sits pretty comfortable. And I'm sitting a bit higher up as before, so not too high. So I could probably use another centimeter or so, and that is just perfect. The distance is good for me, and I can slide the seat back and forth. So these seats will fit. So now I'm going to start to modify those seats. So here we have the MX-5 seat and we have the TVR original seat. And they look very similar. Of course, the mechanism is slightly different. And don't mind this part yet. I'll explain that in a few minutes to you. But what you can see is that measuring is very important. So you need to measure the distance between those studs that are going through the floor. Now this is 325 millimeters, and if I would measure it here on the original site, this is about 35 centimeters or 350 millimeters. So this one is wider than that one. So we can't fit it directly, so we need to do an adaptation. I'd already made kind of a bracket for that, but I'll give you a close-up in a few minutes. But also, you need to measure it in the length. So this one is roughly about 335 millimeters. This wooden bar here was on the bottom underneath the floor of the TVR, and you can see that fits nicely into it, right? So now on the bar that I made, or the adaptation, this will fit nicely as well. So I know that this seat will fit at least in the length. I don't know yet in the width, but this is something we need to calculate and then adjust this rail as well. So there is some adaptation you have to do, and I already did part of that, and this is the end result on one side. I still have to grind off a few things, but that is not that important right now. So let me hold this next to the original one so you can actually see the difference. And I need to just lift it up a bit to unbolt it. So you can remove these bolts on this slide, and that will allow you then easy modification. So you don't need to start welding when everything is in place, because then you might destroy the seat or damage the seat. I was hoping I could slide it out completely without removing it, but that doesn't turn out to be possible. So, all right, so that's off. Now let's see what I've done on one side of the seat. So this is the modified version, that is the original version. As you can see, the bottom lip, I've cut it off because we have no need for that. And then I created a thick metal panel plate. As you can see, it's real thick and solid. Drilled some holes on it with an offset to compensate for the difference between the outer posts, so it fits nicely onto the floor pan of the TVR. And I welded it there on the top, and you can actually see there's a gap here, so that raises it a little bit, so I'm going to get it about the same height as the original TVR seat. And that's about all there is to be done. It's just a bunch of measuring and checking. So now let's see if this part is going to fit in the holes of the TVR floor pan. So this is the floor plan of the driver's side, and you can actually see where the old seat has been sitting, like so. So now I can install this back in, and the holes are now fitting, as you can see, right? So now we have a good firm fit, and the seat can go on. I probably will install the wood underneath because I want to sit a little bit higher up, because I'm a short guy. I don't know yet exactly. We'll see how it turns out at the end. If I don't use this, then we'll fit it like this, so you can see it fits really nice. So we don't need to do a lot of extra work on this. And now I need to fix the other side, and I'm going to make it exactly the same. Now it's going to be important that I space it right. We have created the first bar, and it's a bit up to you on how you want to do this, but the easiest way is to get a thick bar, metal bar, and then put some bolts to it and weld them onto that, and then weld it onto the old fixture and make sure it's kind of horizontal. And you need to measure this. So now it's time to do this second bar, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. So here you have the original part. The bottom part here we'll have to cut off. If I can get my pen open, there we go. So this we're going to cut off right there. So it's the same as this side. And then we're going to take a thick piece of metal like this, and this is like 0.5 centimeter thick or 5 millimeters, and it's about 30 mil wide. And then we're going to weld that on there exactly the same way as on this side. So I will have to make a little cutout here, And I also will have to install the bolts where the bolts are supposed to be. Now, I don't know exactly where they should be. I'm going to put it, of course, on the same distance from the top. So this I'm going to make the same. And from the bottom, that's important. And in fact, if I use my old wooden spacer that was on the car, I can actually draw the holes where they should be. So that should line up quite well. However, I don't know how wide it has to be. So does it have to be there or here? So I know the distance, right, but on the original seats between the two studs. So now will just make the holes here and over there. I will put the bolts through, and I'm going to do an offset again towards the inside because I know the new seat is wider than the old seat. So then once I'm finally going to weld in this bar, I can slide it back and forth until I have it in the right spot and the right distance. Now I know that the back side is wider than the front side on the old seat. So it's about 0.5 centimeter difference. So I have to consider that once I'm doing that. So I'm going to start now with drilling the big holes and welding in these bolts. And to do so, I'm just going to measure from the top to the bolt and the space here from the edge, and I'm going to do it exactly the same. And for that, I'm just going to use this spacer. This is the easiest way to do it. You can see how that fits nicely. So I'm just going to do it on this metal bar here, and I'm just going to mark that. Very simple. But let's do it on the other bench so we can actually start drilling the holes. So this is the first rail we made. I'm just going to clean it up a bit on the welding areas, especially where the pin is. I'm just going to flatten that out, and then I will start on the second rail. So now we can start with the second rail. And here is the second rail, and the first thing we will have to do here is to cut off that piece right here, because that's something we don't need. So I'm going to take it off now, and I'm going to put it on the grinder to clean these edges. So the next thing we want to do is to make sure that they are exactly the same length, and we place them next to each other, and we look on the top part and they are exactly the same length. So now we need to create the metal bar that goes on top, and before we do so, we will actually drill the holes in it. This little piece of wood has always been very handy because it gives me the exact dimension where the bolts are supposed to be. So I'm just going to transpose that to the metal bar. I'm going to level that up, make sure everything is right. And I'm just going to mark these holes. Going to weld the bolts onto the bar, and then we're going to trial fit the bar. Alright, so I've welded up the bolts, and now we could actually install it if we wanted to on this rail, so welding it on there. I still have to do a cutout on this pin here, but that's a minor thing. But now I need to know the distance between the two, because that has to match up the holes on the floor pan of the car. I have the old seat here, so I made some templates, and this is a template for the back side. So it's a piece of cardboard with holes in it, so I know what the distance is, and did the same thing for the front. And remember, the front was a bit wider than the back. And now if I move these over to the new seat, I can actually align this, and then mark it where this is supposed to be, especially here on the top. I can do an easy marking, and if I'm going to weld it, that's where I'm going to weld it in. I also do the same on the bottom. There we go. And all I need to do now is to mark where that pin is, and then I can cut this out, and then I'm going to measure one more time to see how far that needs to go, and then we can weld it up. So I've cut out this piece of the bar so we can fit it all over that pin, and now let's see if this still fits. So this is the front spacer, and I think that looks good. So now I can align it with this pin against it, and I can weld it, and then we can also weld the top part. So let's go and weld this, and for that I will have to remove the support here, because I don't want to weld it onto the seat. Although you could, but I'm afraid I'm going to have damage on the seat itself. So I lined up the bar on the support, and I made some cuts so I know exactly where it's supposed to be. I put some small washers underneath so it's level, because it has to be level with the bar. So I did check on that on the other one as well, and that's good. So now I'm going to tag it in place, first over here, and then I'll do the other side. It's just a small tag, so we are sure we have no issues, and we're going to trial fit it before we finally weld it. Okay. All right. So we're going to take it with us back to the boot and see if it fits. I've mounted the bar back onto the seat. So this is the last one we welded up, and let's see if it still fits. So let's do the front one, and that seems to fit nicely. So I know that these are spaced correctly. So I can weld that one up for sure. Let's see the top one. Now the top one is off by, let's say 2 millimeters. So I'm going to undo this little spot weld here, and I'll move it over a little bit so we have a perfect fit. I know I could probably make a bigger hole in the floor pan of the TVR where the bolts are fitting through, but I just don't want to do that. I just want to make sure that, you know, everything is fitting properly. All right. I corrected the bar and welded it up, and now I just installed it, and I did slide down the two guides, and let's have a quick look if they are still okay. So this is the back side, that's all right, and this is the front. So let's see if the spacing is good, and that looks pretty good. So now all I need to do is really to trial fit it in the car, but before doing so I will need to connect this locking mechanism. So let's see if we can pull that through. Here we go. And I might need to put a wire around it, but let's see if that works. Yeah, that seems to work fine. Okay, not sure. I think I'm going to move them both backwards. Yeah. And I want to make sure they're in the same position. So now that should be right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's important that they are set the same. So I guess it's going to be the moment of truth. So I'm going to try to fit it and see if the holes now line up or not. Here we are. So let's see what side goes in first. Okay. So now it's a bit of fiddling to find these holes and to find studs. Oh, they fell in. At least in the back I think they did. Yep, in the front they didn't yet. So let's see what we need to do to get them in the front as well. Yeah, I think they are now fully in. Yeah, they are. So that's the seat now all the way in the front, and the door can still close. That's good. At least I think it is. Yeah. And let's see what happens if I move the seat backward. And now I can move the seat even more backward. And I think this is perfect. All I need to do now is bolt it down. I think the seat fits real nice into the car. And it's a modern seat and very comfortable. And it was cheap as well. So I'm going to give it a try and see how nice it sits or how uncomfortable it sits. I think it's going to be all right. Now the car is of course now at a very strange height. Let's see. I haven't bolted down the seat yet. But what I do like is that I'm sitting a lot higher up than before, because with the old seats I was really sitting down. And now I can even adjust the seat. Let me see where it is. I see. All the way to the front for the very shorties, and all the way to the back for the guys that are a bit longer. Now I'm a short guy, 168. So if you are longer, or taller I should say, then you might want to reposition these holes a bit. So you might want to make different adjustments. And that's why you have to measure it based on the seat, try it out, and you've seen me doing it. So it's all about measuring. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.